The air on the flight deck tasted like metal and burned fuel. The deep thrum of engines was a constant vibration through the floor. A crowd had formed, a wall of gray flight suits. They were all Martians, tall and strong. They watched the scene in the center with cold eyes. Leo Cruz stood over Maya Holt. He was a head taller, his shoulders broad, scar cut through his eyebrow. He was a champion pilot, a hero of the Martian colonial fleet. Maya was on one knee. A thin line of blood ran from her lip down her chin. She clutched a broken diagnostic tablet. Her Earth-made flight suit looked cheap next to theirs. "You were in my way, Dirtsider," Leo said, his voice loud in the quiet. He had shoved her. The tablet had shattered on the deck. Maya looked up, her face pale but calm. "You walked into me," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it did not shake. Leo laughed, a short, harsh sound. The crowd of Martians smiled. They saw this as sport. An Earther cadet, the weakest link on the battle carrier Odyssey, talking back. "On Mars," Leo said, leaning close, "we teach respect." He moved fast, his open hand cracking against the side of her head. The blow was not meant to injure, just to humiliate, send her stumbling back to the deck. A few people chuckled. No one moved to help her. Then heavy boots echoed. Commander Frank Walsh arrived. He was a stern man with a face like stone. He looked from Leo to Maya, who was pushing herself up from the floor. "Report," Walsh commanded. Leo stood straight. "Sir, the cadet was insubordinate. She damaged fleet property." He pointed at the broken tablet. Maya said nothing. She just watched the commander, her eyes dark and steady. Walsh's gaze swept over the Martians. He saw their approval, saw the Earther girl alone. Discipline here was Martian discipline. "The circle," he announced. A murmur went through the crowd. The circle was an old fleet tradition. A bare-knuckle fight to settle things. No rules, just a winner. Leo's smile was wide and cruel. He started taking off his flight jacket, revealing powerful arms. Maya did not move. "I did not ask for this," she said to Walsh. "You don't get to ask," the commander replied, his voice flat. "You only get to accept. Step into the circle, cadet." The crew cleared a space, forming a ring with their bodies. The circle was just a stain on the deck, but it felt like a cage. Leo stepped in, rolling his shoulders. He was a predator in his element. "3 moves," he said to Maya, his voice a low promise. "That is all it will take to break you, little Earther." Maya finally moved. She stepped over the line onto the stained deck. She did not take off her jacket. She did not raise her fists like a boxer. Instead, her feet shifted into a low, balanced stance. One hand drifted forward, palm open. The other stayed near her chest. It was a strange, fluid posture. It looked like a dance, not a fight. The crowd laughed. They saw weakness. They saw a silly Earther trying to look tough. Leo charged. He was fast for his size, a bull of a man. He threw a powerful straight punch aimed at her face. It was meant to end the fight right there. Maya did not block. She did not try to dodge away. As his fist flew toward her, she stepped forward, inside the arc of his blow. Her body turned. Her open hand met his wrist, not to stop it, but to guide it. Her other arm pressed against his elbow. There was a sharp, wet pop. Leo's forward momentum vanished. He screamed, a raw sound of shock and agony. He dropped to his knees, clutching his arm. His right arm now bent the wrong way at the elbow. The laughter died instantly. Maya stood over him, her breathing even.
Ah!
She had not thrown a single punch. The fight had lasted 2 seconds. The silence on the deck was heavier than the engine noise. Every Martian stared, their faces frozen in disbelief. The weak Earther cadet was still standing. Her champion was on the ground, broken. Commander Walsh's cold eyes were no longer just on Maya. They were narrowed, calculating. This was not a victory. It was a problem. He looked at the stunned crowd and then back at the girl in the center of the circle. "Restrain her," he said. The silence on the flight deck broke like glass. Shock turned into a low, angry murmur. 2 security officers in black uniforms moved forward. They were not gentle. They grabbed Maya by her arms. Their grips were tight, digging into her flesh. She did not resist. She kept her eyes forward, watching Commander Walsh. Leo Cruz was still on the floor. A medic was there now, talking to him in a low voice. Leo's face was white with pain and pure hatred, stared at Maya as they helped him up. Walsh walked over to her. He stood very close. His voice was a cold, hard whisper meant only for her. "You think you won?" he said. "You think that was skill? That was a fluke? Oh, you just declared war on the wrong people, girl." He turned to the security officers. "Take her to the brig. Charge her with excessive force and conduct unbecoming a fleet officer." They started to pull her away. The crowd of Martians parted for them. No one looked at her with amusement now. Her looks were like knives. She had broken more than Leo's arm. She had broken their idea of themselves. They would not forget it. The walk to the brig was long. The corridors of the Odyssey were narrow and gray. The air was cold. Alarms blared somewhere deep in the ship, a routine drill. Red light flashed on the metal walls. It felt like the ship itself was angry. They put her in a small cell. The door was a solid sheet of metal with a small window, slid shut with a heavy thud. The sound of the lock was final. She sat on the hard bench. The cell smelled of cleaner and old sweat. She could still feel the vibration of the engines through the floor. She looked at her hands. They were steady. Hours passed. There was no window, no way to tell time. Then the door slid open again. A man stood there. He was older, with short gray hair. He wore a simple fleet uniform without any pilot patches. His name was Alan Pace. He was her advisor, an earther like her. He was one of the few who had supported her being here. Stepped inside, the door closed behind him. He did not sit. "What did you do, Maya?" he asked. His voice was tired. "He hit me first," she said. "I know that," Alan said. He ran a hand over his face. "But you did not just hit him back. You destroyed him. In front of everyone. You made them look weak." "He was weak," Maya said. Her voice was flat. His stance was poor. His attack was all force, no control. It was easy. Alan Pace stared at her. "That is not the point. This is not about a fight. This is about politics. The Martian commanders have been looking for a reason to purge the Earther cadets. You just gave it to them. They will make an example of you." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "A formal hearing is scheduled for 0800. They will convict you. They will strip you of your rank and send you back to Earth in disgrace. Your career is over." Maya looked at the blank wall. She had worked her whole life to get here. To prove that an Earther could be as good as a Martian. Now it was gone. "There's nothing I can do?" she asked. Alan's face was grim. "Unless a miracle happens, no. They have all the power here." Just then, a different alarm cut through the ship. This one was not a drill. It was a high, piercing wail that meant battle stations. The red light in the corridor outside flashed faster. Alan's head snapped up. He listened for a second, his eyes wide. The ship shuddered. A deep boom echoed through the hull. The lights flickered. It was not an engine test. Alan Pace looked back at Maya. His expression completely changed. It was no longer about her failure. It was about survival. "That is a proximity alert," he said, his voice tight. "You have an enemy contact. Ghost ship." The ship shook again, harder this time. A distant explosion rumbled. The light in the cell went out, plunging her into darkness for a second, before a dim emergency bulb glowed to life. Alan was already at the door, pounding on it to be let out. He looked back at her, his face pale in the red emergency light. "They are jamming our systems," he said. "Our guns cannot get a lock. We are blind." He met her eyes through the small window. "It is using Aikido," he said, his voice full of disbelief. "The enemy ship. It moves just like you did." The cell door slid open with a violent hiss. Alan Pace did not wait. He grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her into the corridor. The emergency lights painted everything a bloody red. The ship groaned like a living thing, metal straining against an unseen force. "Move," Alan shouted over the blaring alarm. They ran. Crew members rushed past them in a controlled panic. The deck tilted sharply, and Maya slammed into a wall. A shower of sparks erupted from a ceiling panel. The air smelled of ozone and fear. They burst onto the bridge. It was chaos. Screens flickered with static and damage reports. Commander Walsh stood in the center, his face a mask of fury. "On a firing solution now," he roared. A young officer at a console shook his head, his hands flying over the controls. "I can't, sir." The target's evasive pattern is, it's impossible. It's like it knows our firing algorithms before we do. On the main view screen, a ship danced against the blackness of space. It was long and needle-thin, a ghost from the Jovian separatists. It moved with a fluid, twisting grace. It weaved through the Odyssey's laser fire without a single shot touching it. It was not dodging. It was redirecting, using the paths of the energy blasts to slide into new, unpredictable positions. Maya stared, her breath catching. She saw it instantly. The turns were not sharp breaks. They were blends. The ship's thrusters fired in short, precise bursts, never fighting the momentum, just guiding it. It was the same principle, the same art. It's Aikido, she said, her voice quiet but clear in the tense silence. Walsh turned, his eyes burning.
Ew, what did you say? The ship, Maya said, pointing at the screen. It's not using standard evasion.
It's using the energy of your attacks. It's leading them, blending with them. It's a martial art, an old one. The tactical officer stared at her. She's right, sir. Look at the pattern. It's a perfect flow. We're not shooting at it. We're feeding it. Another impact rocked the bridge. A console exploded, throwing a crewman to the floor. Walsh gripped his command chair to stay upright. He looked from the dying screens to Maya. His career, his ship, his crew were seconds from destruction. Can you stop it? He asked her. His voice was stripped of all pride, leaving only raw need. I can predict it, Maya said. I know the forms. I know what it will do next. Walsh made a decision, pointed a sharp finger at Alan. Get her to the last interceptor now. Alan nodded and pulled Maya toward the exit. Halt, Walsh called out. She turned back. His face was hard. You will fly out there. You will engage that ghost. If you are lying, you will die. But if this is some kind of trap, if you are a traitor, know this. He held up a small black remote. I have a dead man's switch linked to your ship's reactor. One signal from me, and you turn into stardust. Do you understand? Maya held his gaze. She understood perfectly. She was not being given a chance. She was being used as a weapon with a trigger pointed at her head. She turned and ran with Alan toward the fighter bay. The corridor was filled with smoke. The distant roar of a firefight echoed from somewhere below. They reached the launch tube. Her interceptor, Calcine Wisp, sat waiting. It was a small, sleek craft, the last one left. Alan helped her into the cockpit. The principles are the same, he asked, his voice tight. The principles are always the same, Maya said, pulling on her helmet. The canopy closed over her. The world shrank to the glow of her instruments. The launch sequence began. She saw the stars ahead through the magnetic containment field. A new voice crackled in her ear. It was bitter and familiar. Leo Cruz, this is Interceptor 2, he said. Command says I have to watch your back, Wisp. Try not to get us both killed. Maya ignored him. Her focus was on the ghost, a sliver of death on her targeting screen. She pushed the throttle forward. Her ship shot out into the silent, violent darkness. The ghost immediately broke away from the Odyssey. It turned its nose toward her, recognizing a new, more interesting opponent. It flew straight at her, not firing, just moving. It was a test, a feint. She could feel the pilot on the other side, reading her, just as she was reading him. She did not rise to the bait. She did not try to dodge. She adjusted her thrusters slightly, angling her ship into the path of his approach, mirroring his energy. For a moment, they flew in perfect, silent harmony. Then a transmission cut through the secure channel. A man's voice, calm and utterly focused. So, the voice said, the last student of the old way is an Earther. A blinding white pulse erupted from the ghost, washing over her ship. It was not a weapon. It was an EMP. Every screen in Maya's cockpit flickered and died. The hum of her engines went silent. Her ship was dead, a metal coffin drifting toward a moon's gravity well. Silence. The only sound in Maya's cockpit was her own breathing, loud inside her helmet. Her ship, the Wisp, was a dead weight. All the screens were black. The engine readouts were zero. The gentle hum of life support was gone. She was floating in the dark. Through her cockpit canopy, she saw the ghost ship. It hung in space, a predator watching its dying prey. It began to turn, lining up for the kill shot. Its main cannon glowed with a soft, deadly light. On the bridge of the Odyssey, Commander Walsh watched the main screen. The icon for the Wisp was dark. The ghost was moving in. "She failed," a tactical officer said, his voice hollow. Walsh's thumb rested on the black remote. He could end it now. Turn her into a brief, contained explosion. A clean failure. He hesitated. Then another ship moved. Interceptor 2, Leo Cruz's ship, surged forward. Its systems were rebooting, slower than the Ghost's. It was damaged, trailing coolant like blood. "Fall back." Walsh barked into the com. "That is an order." Leo did not answer. His ship, sluggish but determined, flew on an intercept course. He positioned himself directly between the drifting Wisp and the Ghost. The Ghost's pilot saw the new threat. He adjusted his aim. A lance of energy shot from the Ghost's cannon. Leo did not try to evade. Couldn't. He fired his own thrusters and flew his ship straight into the path of the blast. The energy beam tore through his interceptor's wing. The ship spun out of control, a cloud of debris expanding around it. But it had worked. The kill shot meant for Maya had missed. The sacrifice created chaos. The debris cloud scattered sensors. For a few precious seconds, the Ghost was blind. Inside the Wisp, a single light flickered on. A small backup power cell had finally activated. It was not enough for the engines or the weapons computer, but it was enough for one thing: a manual targeting scope. It was a simple device, a metal ring with a crosshair, mounted in front of the canopy. A pilot had to look through it with their own eyes. No computers, no calculations. It's just human skill. Maya's hands flew over the dead panels. She rerouted the tiny trickle of power. A faint glow returned to her thrusters. She could not run, but she could turn. The Ghost emerged from the debris cloud. It was turning to find her again. It was close. Too close for its long-range guns. It was a mistake. Maya pushed her control stick. Her thrusters fired, a weak sputter of gas. It was just enough to spin her ship around. She pressed her eye against the cold metal of the scope. The Ghost filled her view. She saw its sleek black hull. She saw the glowing vents of its main engine. She ignored the fear. She ignored the shaking of her ship. She became perfectly still. She was not a pilot and a broken fighter. She was a student of the old way. She saw the line, the one path. Her finger found the manual launch trigger for her missiles. She took a slow breath. She led the target. Not where it was, but where its own momentum was taking it. She fired. A single low-yield missile shot from its tube. It was a dumb weapon, no guidance system. It flew in a straight line, exactly where she had aimed. The Ghost pilot saw it coming. He tried to twist away, but he was still turning. His own movement brought his main engine intake directly into the path of the missile. The small warhead vanished into the dark opening. For a second, nothing happened. Then a flash of orange light bloomed from inside the Ghost ship. A silent, violent eruption tore the ship apart from the inside. Metal and fire bloomed in a perfect sphere. The shockwave hit the Wisp, spinning her ship again. On the bridge of the Odyssey, everyone stared at the screen. The Ghost was gone. Only expanding wreckage remained. The silence was broken by the crackle of a weak cum signal. It was Leo Cruz. His voice was strained, breathing hard. "Ejecting now," he said. "The Wisp. Is the Wisp still there?" Commander Walsh lowered the remote. He did not look at his crew. He looked at the drifting icon of Maya's ship. "She's there," Walsh said quietly. He turned to his communications officer. His face was unreadable. "Open a channel to the brig," he ordered. "Tell them to prepare a cell for pilot crews." The recovery bay was quiet, the only sound the hum of medical scanners. Maya sat on the edge of a cot, a blanket around her shoulders. She watched the crew through the open door. They did not look at her with anger anymore. They looked at her with a kind of wary awe. Leo Cruz was brought in. His right arm was in a cast, his face bruised. 2 security officers flanked him. They guided him not to a medical station, but to a holding cell in the corner of the bay. The door locked with a solid clang. Commander Walsh entered. The bay fell silent. He walked past Maya without a glance and stopped in front of Leo's cell. "Leo Cruz," Walsh said, his voice flat and official. You are charged with direct disobedience of a combat order. Your actions endangered this vessel and compromised a tactical engagement. Leo stared back, his jaw tight. He said nothing. Walsh turned. His eyes finally landed on Maya. He walked over to her. He did not thank her. He did not congratulate her. The charges against you are dropped, he stated. It was not an apology. It was a transaction. Your performance, while unorthodox, was effective. He looked her up and down, as if seeing her for the first time. That maneuver, that shot. No simulation teaches that. Where did you learn it? Before Maya could answer, Alan Pace stepped forward from the doorway. His face was grim. He held a data pad. We recovered the Ghost's black box, Alan said. The signal was weak, but we decoded the pilot's final transmission. It wasn't a distress call. He tapped the pad. The calm, focused voice of the enemy pilot filled the room. The seed is planted. The old way has returned to the fleet. They are not ready for the harvest. Initiate protocol, Ares. The message ended. The silence it left was heavier than any explosion. Walsh's face went pale. Protocol, Ares? Hey, that's a Martian contingency plan. For a fleet-wide insurrection. He looked at Maya, his eyes sharp. That pilot? He was one of us. A Martian. Separatist. The pieces fell into place. Attack was not just an enemy action, it was a test. It's a test of their own security, their own tactics. And Maya had been the variable they never expected. He knew the old way, Maya said softly. He was testing you. Seeing if anyone left in the fleet could still fight it. Walsh turned to the crew in the bay. I want every ship in the task force screened. I want every pilot reevaluated. This was not an attack. It was a reconnaissance mission. And we just showed them our only defense. He pointed a finger at Maya, his expression a mix of fear and newfound respect. You are not a cadet anymore. You are a strategic asset. They know about you now. They will come for you. He strode toward the door, barking orders. The bay erupted into controlled chaos. Leo watched from his cell, his defiance gone, replaced by a cold understanding. He and Maya were on the same side now, whether he liked it or not. Alan Pace put a hand on Maya's shoulder. You saved the ship, he said. Maya looked past him, through the bay's large viewport. The stars were calm and steady, but she knew it was a lie. The war had just changed. It was no longer Earth against Mars. It was a shadow war, a fight against an enemy that wore their own face. She stood up, letting the blanket fall. He was wrong, she said, her voice quiet but clear. The last student wasn't an Earther. She looked at Alan, her eyes hard. He was the second to last.